Now to discuss is John Schweppe, the Director of Policy and Government Affairs for the American Principles Project. John, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Great. So credit to Utah Governor Spencer Cox on this one, would you say? Because he's about as squishy as they come for Republicans, and yet here he is going up against a big company.
Yeah, this has been wonderful to see in Utah. They've been very aggressive going after the porn sites, after the social media sites. And, this is a pretty common sense idea, age verification for kids, for inappropriate content. And, we actually have laws in this country that prevent the distribution of obscenity to kids. They just go unenforced, completely unenforced, actually, and it's been that way for 3 decades. And so now, finally, we're seeing state legislatures do something about it, Utah being one of them. And, one of the ones I'm really excited about, it actually might happen here in Texas, which would be the 5th state in the country to pass age verification for porn sites. So, this is really important. We want to protect kids. I think that's something that both parties should be able to agree on. And hopefully we can push back against the groomers, who are pretty much the only people in the country who want kids looking at porn.
Well, I know in Pornhub and their parent company MindGeek, they found themselves in, a lot of lawsuits, a lot of legal trouble for allegedly allowing to have, violent videos of sexual abuse and especially of minors to be uploaded onto their websites, to be viewed on some of their platforms. So they've been in hot water about this kind of stuff before. And also it's interesting to me because Pornhub will say, well, actually, we have enough, roadblocks in place to kind of make sure kids don't stumble upon what's on our website, and this ID stuff, that's only going to drive away other traffic from adults who kind of want to do this anonymous. But I'm thinking, well, we know that's not true. If you look at kids, 12 years old usually seems to be the age that a lot of especially young boys get exposed to porn, but now it's sometimes as young as 8 years old. We know kids are being drawn into that. We know that a lot of these adult websites actually do advertise their wares in a sense in such a way that kids are kind of enticed to click on it without knowing what they're going to be exposed to. So do you think in many ways Pornhub doesn't care if they, destroy an entire generation of the youth as long as they get that, clicks, ad revenue, whatever it is they're looking for?
No, I think if Pornhub cared at all about what happened to their customers, obviously they wouldn't be in business. They're one of the most evil companies in the world. They're destroying marriages. They're destroying families. They're sexually exploiting, all these folks that are depicted on their website. So obviously that they're a terrible company. And, I know sometimes Republicans think, well, we want to let these companies grow and expand. This is one I think we're pretty comfortable stifling and hurting. I think that would be a good thing. But, ultimately where we do have agreement on this is that the state has a compelling interest in protecting kids from this type of material. Maybe there's a speech argument for pornography for adults. I disagree with that, but maybe, But ultimately, when it comes to kids, there is no argument there. This is a case we would win if it went to the Supreme Court. And so my hope is that, all of the states, frankly, Republican, Democrat, red or blue, that they pass this kind of legislation to make sure that kids, get to enjoy their childhood a little longer before they're exposed to sexuality.
I know that's what we hope. So I really do hope more states do take this up, no matter how much Pornhub and these other companies want to gnash their teeth, as some book out there, some good book out there has said before. But this pornified culture that we have, in many ways for the decades, especially since Playboy, that it really sexualized everybody. And now the left just kind of came along, used that momentum and said, hey guys, well now you can personalize it. You can make up your own sexuality, your own gender, your own whatever, and you name it. And now we see even the military, the Navy, is trying to use this as a recruitment tool. Do you think that they're kind of missing the mark on that one, to put it really mildly?
Absolutely. It's funny. I get liberal journalists ask me all the time about, the question of transgender folks in the military and, aren't we hurting recruitment by saying we don't want to have transgender people in the military? This is actually part of the problem with recruitment, right? This effort to appeal to this woke demographic, the folks who actually do enlist in the military are pretty normal Americans, red-blooded Americans who want to fight for their country and their compatriots, not, promote this woke agenda overseas. And so, I think really all of this woke effort in the military, we need Republicans in Congress to man up and really start to investigate this, be willing to, hold military funding over these types of things. I know every year we just kind of pass the NDAA and it just let it happen. But the reality is the military has been totally corrupted by these woke activists, and they're destroying it. And frankly, I'm worried we're going to lose a major war if we keep going down this road. We want to have the best fighting force in the world that's really good at killing people and blowing things up. And I'm afraid we're more focused on, how we look in front of a mirror, applying lipstick and things like that. And that's pretty crazy, I think.
It is, and in many ways, the military's gone from being a military with a bureaucratic structure to get the logistics right to just a bureaucracy, a bloated one at that, a very ideological one with a military, if you even want to call it that, kind of attached somewhere in there, and that of course is degrading day by day. But just looking at bureaucracies, especially in DC, all the different agencies, the executive agencies, all the different ones that basically can create administrative rules that are basically like laws, as if they're mini, Congress, and they can enforce it because they are the executive branch, and then they get a lot of special treatment, a lot of deference from the judicial system, actually. And so all that's to say is now that's all being put on the line with the Supreme Court. This Monday, they announced they're going to be looking or hearing a case that has to do with some fishermen in the New England area that could actually kind of slash the Chevron doctrine. I was wondering if you could explain that for our audience and some of the precedents that could come from a good ruling on this.
Yeah, so the Chevron doctrine basically has empowered the administrative state. Folks may not know this, but Congress is pretty lazy. They don't like to write specific things into law, so they keep things very general, defer to the administrative state, and then when the administrative state gets it wrong, they harumph and they call hearings and they say, hey, this isn't what we intended, but they leave it as an open book. And so in some ways, I'm actually sympathetic to the bureaucrats because they're trying to make sense of these laws that have no specifics within them. But ultimately, we want to limit the power of the administrative state. We want the people to have control over our laws. And that means Congress needs to reassert their Article 1 authority. And so, if the Supreme Court rules and basically says, Congress, do your jobs, I think that would be a really great thing for the American people.
That it would, because on something like the ATF, we talk about all the time how they can create these rules and then they can finalize the rules, basically turning on what they just did recently with the pistol brace and, turning millions of Americans basically into felons overnight. And the pistol braces really help a lot of disabled veterans to be able to fire their weapons better, to have that stability. But the ATF can make its rule because Congress basically sends a blank check saying, I don't know, create something on gun safety, whatever. But again, if, like you said, if Congress actually had to do its job, well, then guess what? We're back to the gun control debate. And Congress has been stymied when they try and go forward on gun control. No matter how much they have the protests and everything else they think on their side, they can't really pass it through. So they let the ATF kind of do the dirty work and then enforce, and then the courts give them deference on it. But hopefully maybe this can kind of start to cut through on that. So John, as always, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.